Hi, Leon. So today we
Hi,
are going
Sonja.
to talk about episode 5.
Yep, it's episode 5 already. We are now past the halfway mark of the series.
Okay. And yeah, and it's getting more and more interesting. So I'm going to hand it over to you as to put us into the picture. What are we here for? What are we going to discuss today?
Yeah, I think the way I approach it in the past, if it's helpful, just to give a quick hopscotch picture through the episode that gives us an overview, and then we, as usual, go into the detail with the first scene and so on. But it seems like one of the themes in this one is about the phoenix rising. You know, what happens when you lose everything? Is their capacity to rise again. And we introduced into this story through Toprak's family history, which is the detail we can go into. And then there's this theme about Fico and Sergei getting closer to each other, and he surprising her in a kind of a meeting. What shall we call it? A speed dating meeting. Suddenly, Fico is there. The source of Toprak's anger is revealed. We also understand in this episode why Ada actually walked away from Toprak at the time. We see a lot of flashbacks around that. We also learn that Layla is now, as she says, filthy rich because she had a windfall. And there's a surprise birthday party for Sergei. Toprak's constellations are very interesting, and I'm sure we will unpack it in more detail. Yeah, and then the episode for me ends up on a very beautiful note towards the end, but we can get there later.
So, yes. So we have this episode opening with the gypsy dancing scene, and as you said, the phoenix rising. And the question is it possible to be reborn from the ashes? And that's what you were talking about, the phoenix rising. And then it is going into what we want to call ancestral healing. So, what kept that fire burning? Would you not believe the fire lit years ago could still burn today? Would you? So the question is, what are they talking about? What fire was kept burning? And in that beginning of that scene, we saw that they had to put out the fires very quickly to move on. And then the question is, did the fire really burn out? And in this constellation work, I think we see that when something is not completed in a good way, that's really what it is about. The fire is still burning. There has been no completion. It's not come to a good way in a good ending, and so something changes. And we talk about that in the constellations. What would that be? Examples of that would be when somebody dies suddenly. They're still in the full bloom of life, and all of a sudden they die suddenly by some or other event. We also look at it in constellations when children are stillborn. That fire hasn't really burned. But we also look at it in relationship. When a relationship hasn't come to a good end, there is still that burning, and then there is still that whatever is lying underneath. It's been put out, it's been pushed under, but it's still burning. So I think that is really what this is talking about, is when something has come to an abrupt end, but it's not complete. So that's
Yes.
really what this means.
Yeah. So
And
the smoke, the black smoke and the putting out the fire is symbolic of that trauma, that feelings that still blister there under the surface that has not been given attention properly. And so, as you say, it's not been closed properly. And so in the subconscious of the family system, these feelings, this black smoke is still simmering, and it can flicker up. The amber of it is present, and that emotional amber, let's call it that way, can flicker up into a fire in the form of behavior, the form of contemporary anger, that some of the younger generation just suddenly has this absolute rage, and they can't explain where it comes from.
absolutely. And also the patterns that keep repeating. And for me, this thick black smoke is very indicative of trauma, because that's what a trauma is. It's like that heaviness, that ominous feeling that one can't quite grasp. One can't quite put it somewhere where it makes sense.
Yeah. And some of us, when we go to trauma, and we see this in this episode as well, when people go to trauma, they have different coping skills. Some people go into denial, like we see Sergei's mother, who is curious about what's going on, but actually when it's opened up for discussion, she ignores it. She goes she just goes off track into a different conversation. And sometimes that often happens, is that in family systems we experience some of the generations, they have a saying, well, that is something we don't talk about.
Yes, we don't.
And that often happens. We don't talk about that.
Yes, exactly. And I'm looking here, fire is not your enemy. Fire protects us, it feeds us, it keeps us, if you know how to handle it. And what if, and I'm a little bit naughty today, what if we use the word life instead of fire? Life is not your enemy. Life is a journey. And what is it that burns to the ground is when there is something in life that burns too hastily, too big, too explosively. But if you're smart enough to rise from the ashes, that is really what we want to do. We want to go, how are we going to rise from the ashes? And the only way, I'm saying it again, I've said it in the past, is the only way is to go through the trauma, because that's when the true healing occurs. But being afraid of the fire does not allow you to even acknowledge the wisdom of it and the positive.
Yeah, I want to fully concur with you there. Yes, it is like love, because you have to have the courage to actually go to this fire, go to this. I also think great word for it is truth. Fire and truth for me dances very well together.
Yeah.
It burns, but it wakes you up to what is real. And so in constellation work, it might be uncomfortable to do this work, but in the end, it's very redeeming when the truth is revealed.
Exactly.